In this section, we are going to look at youth and some of the observations of our service providers providing customized employment to these individuals.
What is the biggest change that you have observed as a family since he started work?
The biggest change for me is that it's a dream come true. We dreamt for Greg that he would be able to work one day, that he would get into the work community, and he's there, he's doing that, and so it's thrilling to see him going to work and having workmates and seeing him begin to have relationships with them.
Yeah, I feel the same way. He's being plugged in, so to speak, and the thing is, it's really nice to see him come home and feel happy about himself and feel good about himself. It's just like you see a whole different change in attitude where he's been stimulated and feeling some self-worth, I believe, so it makes us happy as parents, for sure.
Our community consultations in 2007 suggested we should focus on youth, particularly youth transitioning from the high school environment to the work environment. We were encouraged to work early and often with youth, promoting quality work experiences while still in high school, and creating the right supports to develop a strong commitment to employment. 80%, or 223, of the individuals served were youth under age 30. 44 individuals were aged 15 to 19, and 179 from ages 20 to 29. For many of these individuals, they had never worked before. The need for partners became more evident with this group, especially the need to engage their support network, particularly families, peers, and the school system. Families can be important partners. Families who believe in employment can make it happen. As parents, many have been growing the vision for their children for years. This vision includes employment. Families know their children best. They are prepared to open doors and work as partners with the school system, service providers, and employers. Similarly, a disengaged family can slow or in fact hinder the journey to employment. To no one's surprise, youth like to do things that all their friends are doing, including work. We found the process worked best when we could engage other youth in similar activities. For example, sharing and discussing some of their experiences at work, as well as social activities. For many youth that we worked with, this was their first job. While the customized employment process matches skills and interests, first jobs can present their own unique set of challenges. Family, service providers, and employer supports were critical in making some of the social transitions to work. Over the duration of the project, and given the nature of the jobs, for many youth we found 2 or more jobs to introduce youth into the workforce. Again, as youth became more familiar with work and expectations, paid supports faded and natural supports were encouraged and took over. Throughout this process, we noted a need to engage the school systems early and often. Family engagement is a key difference between customized employment and possibly other approaches to employment services. We found it essential to engage the family and the support network right from the beginning. Service providers explained the process, the roles, and expectations. There is an active role for families in the discovery process and creation of the vocational plan. Again, it is all about creating those solid and special working relationships. We found that we were very successful when families engaged with other families, teaching and discussing employment. Families could promote employment. They could talk about steps that they could take. They met and shared with other families similar dreams, concerns, and questions. They spoke and shared employment first thinking. We know of a group that got together and hired guest speakers to talk on employment. They sat with each other and their sons and daughters to discuss what can work look like, what skills need to be grown. Parents are the key. we found first-hand stories and tips of the trade were well received. Parents shared ideas and tools. They looked to discovering the jobs within the jobs and promoting their sons or daughters to employment. Service providers worked with families to understand the nature of the supports and assistance that families could provide and how they could impact the job seeker's employment. For example, in many cases, transportation continued to be a problem. Service providers worked with families to understand how they could assist and how the availability and/or absence of transportation would impact the job creation and perhaps the ideal conditions of employment. On the next few slides, we will hear from Linda Delapart and Hope Taylor from Polaris Employment Services, discussing their approach to working with families for the duration of the project. So I'm going to ask a really large, broad brush question and just we'll have a bit of a discussion on. So the question really is, when you first start a customized employment and recognize the need and the importance of engaging families, can you tell us how you engage families at the start and how do you keep them engaged throughout the whole employment journey?
Actually, when we wrote the project proposal, that was when the family engagement was written into the actual proposal, looking at what customized was, some of the models out of the American system, the trust relationship that appeared to be needed around discovery, working with the individual, their family, and other personal connections seemed critical. So our choice from Polaris's point of view was to look to an organization such as Simon Fraser Society for Community Living, where there were family advocate support, that we could learn some expertise from them, work together with them. So we actually did that before the project even started. We chose to access that support. And then when the project was approved, we met with Simon Fraser Society to say, okay, where do we go from here? They organized a family support meeting in October of the first year, 2008, where they put out a proposal notice and asked families if they wanted to learn about customized employment. And 54 people came to a meeting where we went, oh my, we don't have that many spaces. But I think that helped us engage families to step forward and choose based on what they'd heard about customized and the fact that we didn't know much yet, that it was a pilot. Families came forward. And I think that changed the direction of the project from the get-go. And then trying to be consistent with each family that came along in, again, describing the steps in customized, including discovery and how the family could offer information and support to going forward with their son or daughter or their family member. And then I think engaging families with that trust, we were very fortunate at the beginning of our project. We had a master's in social work graduate who, again, had come from training and background in that, I think, really in engaging families. And I think we, again, really benefited from some leadership there and an ability not just to have a trust relationship, but to also set some boundaries around what that working relationship was going to be. Because when you're going into a more, some of the discovery settings were very social, family get-togethers, going for dinner, going places. Where's the boundary with young people around the staff of the customized employment service? So I think showing families that there were social boundaries and boundaries to what work we did, professional boundaries, I think is also helpful. Defining your role in customized for families, I think helps with that relationship as well.
I think there were a couple of families, if I remember correctly, before I came onto the project that had been given a couple of different discovery activities to do. Since I've been on the project, we have engaged the families in supporting around training for specific duties. I know one young man was having trouble with tying garbage bags, and so his parents worked with him on that at home. One individual had trouble with filing, and so her mom has been working with her on sorting and filing and things like that. So the families have been very engaged in our project. We communicate regularly with them. They know that they're free to call anytime. So I think that that's also part of the trust that we've established with the families.
And I think based on the geographical nature of choosing the Tri-Cities area, Coquitlam Port Moody, and the fact that Polaris only has an office in Burnaby, meant that we were in a way relying on the families as to what environment would you like to meet in. And in much of our meetings actually happened at home
Yes.
with families. And I think that changes your dynamic as well, which is not what has been our more traditional employment service. Not so much of that. So I think that makes a difference to that engagement. We were also meeting with parents and families around the time that worked for that family. So the staff members of Customized Employment Service were very flexible in their hours, both with the providing support on a job, but also in terms of meeting. Some families best to be meeting at 7 at night at their house and things like that. So some of the discovery was done on the weekends. I think that flexibility also gains trust or maintains trust with families.
Was that a change of philosophy or a change of work approach for your staff? I'm just curious how that fit with the way you had traditionally done or provided employment services.
Traditionally, we always, for Polaris, flexible hours. We've been very fortunate staff that are willing to work anytime around the clock. We've had people work, night shifts, things like that. But I would say meeting in families' homes probably wasn't as doable for us in some of the other models. The number of people you have and the time spent traveling and so forth wasn't as easy to do, whereas in Customized, it was designed in that way.
What can families do to help you be better successful in achieving employment goals? So I'm thinking in terms of families' interactions with schools, or are there certain things that you would, advise parents to do early on, or that would be of use?
I think the messaging for families was more around expecting your son or daughter to be a responsible person, and that if they're at work being paid, the employer is going to have expectations as well. And again, because our families came forward self-identified almost, I think we also had families who had that work ethic and that belief that work is important. So that wasn't, that hasn't been the question. Things that they've done, people have helped around transportation, they've helped around clothing for school or going to work, they've helped around duties, like Hope was indicating, helping people train or do extra practice in a particular skill that they're going to need to perform in the work site. Doing the feedback around something changed at home. I think we had an example of a young man whose uniform, a year later, he'd been on the job. Well, the uniform had shrunk a little bit from laundering, or he'd maybe gained a little bit of weight. And so the family said, gee, can you talk to the employer about having a new uniform assigned? So communication, I think, was the key point, and the feeling that the family knew that they could call and we would follow up with the question that they had. So I think it's a partnership more than a what can you do. Area where families are really important, or networks in the themes of customized employment. When you're looking at what kind of themes come out of discovery, is based on these themes, if you're having a meeting, what are the job opportunities, business opportunities, whatever come to mind for the family and the other players, because that helps you with your marketing and going forward. There, that one I think is always more development that can be done in that area. So it's not that one. We did get some leads from the family meetings over the theme and what job might fit, or what duties might fit, or how can we negotiate with an employer. They had some ideas on that. We also had families who were really strong in when employers had things they wanted the young person to improve upon at the job. We would have families that I think really were very realistic and help support the employer's point of view to some degree, or they could see the employer's point of view, not just their son or daughters. And I think that really helped us with the individual to understand the responsibilities of their job. That worked out really well.
I think families were also very important. In one way is like networking, like Linda had said, where when we have a family or team brainstorming meeting, often people will say, oh, I know so-and-so from, down the street who is the owner of a small store or something like that. And several of those things have come up. I think also that families have let us know when they're getting feedback from their son or daughter regarding what's working, what's not working at the job site, and we can take that to the employer. I think that families know that the CES staff is very invested in their individual, and of course they are even more so. And so that makes a huge difference in how we're treated. Professionals come and go in a person's life, family stays forever.
And I think that's probably that we believed in their son or daughter, and we believed things could happen. And I think the other feedback we had from one family when we were doing a presentation at a national conference on Down syndrome, Canadian Down Syndrome Conference, the family member said, how your staff work with my son is different, and you've given him the confidence. It's a slightly different approach than other times he's been engaged in employment or training, and it does make a difference, and it builds his confidence and his self-image and how you've approached it, and how the job has been his responsibility and the relationship with the employer. And I've heard the same conversation from another family without any prompting came forward, and again felt that the customized employment staff believed in her daughter in a way that she says, I've seen very many workers come and go in my daughter's life. Her daughter was one of the older people on our project, and just how important that was to their family, that we believed in her and what she could accomplish.
We noted that working with and engaging the schools was important. While we worked with a large number of youth, some were still in school, some were not. One of our largest challenges was working with the school system. We found all schools and school districts are different. Successes depended on the personal relationship at each school. These take a long time to develop and can be fragile. A teacher leaves and the process of building relationships starts all over. Some service providers built excellent relationships with teachers and education assistants, working with the students to include employment goals in their personal plans, and in some cases actually assisted in finding a suitable work experience. For many, it was limited to assistance in finding a part-time job while still in school, but always promoting the value of work and searching for those ideal conditions to make the first work experience both enjoyable and successful. Over the project, we have seen an increased awareness in the school areas where we have had a demonstration project. We have seen new relationships developed and increased communication between CLBC, the Ministry of Social Development, and the Ministry of Education. We have seen a stronger commitment to the transition protocol and a real desire to create the required partnerships. Employment continues as a key topic in these activities. In the last year of the project, we undertook a targeted program with CBI consultants and the Burnaby school system, looking at how employment goals can be better introduced into the students' individual plans, fully recognizing the ideal conditions of employment as well as the ideal conditions for social inclusion. The purpose was to demonstrate the effectiveness in one school and prepare a model on how the process could be leveraged into all schools. Part of this was to demonstrate the value of universal design and how this approach can work for all students, remembering the value of peer support and peer mentorship. The results of this project will be documented and shared in May 2012.
What I really love about and really excites me about customized employment is the fact that it's based on the belief that everyone has the capacity, has a skill to work and to earn money, whether that is for employment or self-employment. And that is really what's exciting about it. That didn't exist before, right? and also what it has, this pilot project has kind of facilitated, I think, a culture shift that there is now an expectation of young high school students or young people with disabilities that they actually will start thinking about employment and do career planning and look for a future with a job. This week I got a phone call from a mom, said, my son is 16 years old and I would like to meet with you because he would like to find employment. Can you help him do some career planning and find a job? And to me that is so exciting because that demonstrates that the examples of other students that have been supported and have found employment during high school, it has kind of rubbed off, and people now have that expectation for their own son and daughter. And we also have teachers that are very supportive of that. Every summer or every fall when school starts again, they call us like, Tina, we have a student for you.
A full set of resources has been listed at the end of the overview section. However, I would just like to point out a number of resources that may be of particular interest to families or service providers working with families and youth. On the BC EmployingNet website, there are 3 specific resources. One is an instructional DVD on transition planning and career determination for high school students. There is also the booklet Respect, which is a summary of employment success stories, many of which feature youth. There is also the presentation materials for families promoting employment. This is a workshop with all materials that can be presented by families and local partners. In addition, CBI Consultants' website has a number of resources specifically aimed at assisting families, children, and youth.
My name is Doug Higgin. I'm Ben's dad. Just wanted to talk a little bit about our involvement with the Customized Employment Program and what it's meant for us as a family. I guess the main thing is, a parent for any child, I think you tend to be very protective. If the child has a disability, you're probably more so, and certainly Jan and I were very protective of Ben, always have been, which is good and bad. The bad thing is it probably in some cases holds the child back. You're not out there advocating for him as much as probably you should, or was that person, Debbie, who was out there looking for work for Ben, interviewed Ben, talked to lots of employers, and was out there pushing for Ben, not being like us, overly protective and maybe holding Ben back. And as a result of that, Ben got a position that's worked very well for him, not only from an employment standpoint, where he's certainly added to his self-esteem, but socially has been very good for Ben because he's met other people through the program and he's got involved in other activities, including playing wheelchair soccer. Ultimately, the job that Ben did get wasn't a job that probably his mom or I would have picked for him. We were looking for something locally, but I think because of Debbie's involvement, Ben had his horizons were expanded much further than just Qualicum Beach was sort of limited in its ability to handle situations for Ben. We ended up with a position in Nanaimo, which has worked out very well for Ben, but it was Ben's idea. It took some of the restrictions off the employment Ben would otherwise get. So I think that's been another advantage of the program. And also we've appreciated the follow-up.
What was it like for you when Aaron started work? It was wonderful, except that the day before we were leaving on vacation, so I was leaving him for 3 weeks, and I had always been there for everything that he ever started, and I was leaving him and he was starting without me. But for me, knowing that you would pick him up and bring him home and that you were going to be there, it made me get through the 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. My first day, I bawled all day. Mm-hmm. My poor husband. But, I mean, I think it was not just tears of worrying because I wasn't going to be there for him, but it was also, I was happy Yeah.
That he was
That
forward
he was
with his
moving
life.
forward. Yeah, but he was moving forward without me.
Sarah, do you mind if I tell Debbie on the video something about what happened this summer?
Yeah.
Sarah experienced some illness this summer in which she could not work for, it turned out to be about 2 months. It was a lengthy period and it was very difficult on everybody involved. But Debbie was there for us to help us identify that there was a problem and to help Sarah get into some support to work on growing and feeling well again. And she also was there to assure the employer that there would be an employee coming back to work, one who is again capable and energetic and ready to do good work. So the program really worked well for us because Debbie knew Sarah well, knew the client, the employer well, and was able to help to set up the right procedure for returning to work at the right time, so that the employer didn't suffer a loss and the employer felt good about the employee coming back to work again. Sarah's back to work again now at full shifts and she's doing her work very well. The hardest part about customized employment for me as a parent was not the uncertainty about the future, but it was the process of looking for just the right job for her. We had no idea beginning the program what kind of work Sarah might be best at in her future, and the idea that she might land a job at the library was something we had never dreamed of. The job is perfect for her, she can really grow into it, and we think she's doing very well at it.